Bottom of the second inning, bases loaded, and Nick Castellanos turns on a 1-2 pitch and absolutely launches it to left center for a grand slam. Easy, loud, game-changing. And then the weird part starts. Because the second he rounds the bases and gets back to the dugout, the Cardinals manager walks out and asks the umpires to check the bat. And everybody is confused. The umpire included, "You want to check his bat? Yeah, check his bat." See, if you look at the end of the barrel, there's a chunk of wood chipped clean off the top, and there's a very specific rule about how much damage a bat can have before it's considered illegal. But here's the thing, Castellanos didn't shave it. He didn't doctor it. The umpires literally ruled the chip had nothing to do with the ball leaving the yard, so every run counted. They just told him he couldn't swing that bat anymore, and he'd already flipped it over the dugout to a kid in the stands. Respect. Keep that bat check image in your head, by the way, because by the time we're done, you're going to see how many careers got dragged into a room over a piece of lumber. Now you've got to give that same respect to Elly De La Cruz, because he had his bat pulled too, but for a completely different reason. He showed up to the plate with this strange rubber casing around the knob of his bat. The Nationals manager spotted it, and he flagged the umpires because he figured Elly was up to something. And it caused a real delay, because the crew had genuinely never seen this thing before. Normally, that rubber housing holds a sensor that tracks your swing data, the kind of tech you're allowed to use in batting practice, and absolutely not allowed to use in a real game. But Elly had already pulled the sensor out. He just liked the way the rubber felt in his hands. Nobody knew that in the moment, so they made him take it off. And here's the payoff. The next game, he got the knob officially cleared by the league, slapped it right back on, and in his very first at-bat, he crushed a bomb to right center, pimped it, stared the ball all the way down, and then pointed dead at that knob and locked eyes with the other dugout. Message sent. Someone with a little less subtlety? Alex Rodriguez. Because A-Rod once tried to win a hustle play by literally slapping the ball out of the pitcher's glove as he ran up the line. He thought it was slick. Everybody watching thought it was something else entirely. The rulebook is not vague here. You cannot slap at the ball or interfere with the play with your hands. So the umpires huddled, reversed the call, and rang him up. Turns out playing it straight would have been the smarter move. And going from one Yankee to another, Aaron Judge found himself in the middle of his own mess against the Blue Jays. Cameras caught him glancing over toward the Yankee dugout right before a pitch, and then depositing the very next one over the wall. The internet did the internet thing, immediately, accusing New York of relaying pitches to their hitters in real time, and people pointed out he did it more than once. Judge's explanation? He was just looking over because his teammates were getting rowdy in the dugout. Nothing more. You can believe that or not, the jury's still out on that one. If Judge's eyes were suspicious, Lenny Randle operated on a whole different plane of creativity. A batter chops a slow roller down the third baseline, and instead of fielding it, Randle gets down on his hands and knees and starts blowing on the baseball like a man trying to steer a curling stone, hoping his own lungs could push it into foul territory. Watch what happens here. It is genuinely one of the funniest things ever captured on a diamond, but it's also textbook interference. The umpires weren't charmed. They awarded the batter first base and moved on.
Really, Lenny Randle interfered as we watch it on the instant replay. Never touched the ball, but he got down on his hands and knees and literally blew the ball across the foul line.
Now sometimes the bat itself is the crime. 1983. Against the Yankees, 2 outs in the top of the 9th. George Brett steps in and hammers a go-ahead home run. As far as he knows, he just handed his team the ball game. Then the Yankees start barking. They tell the umpires, Brett's got pine tar running way too far up the barrel, and there is a hard rule about exactly how high that sticky stuff is allowed to climb. Brett was over the line. So the umpires didn't just wipe the homer off the board, they called him out, which ended the game and handed New York the win. And his reaction, the absolute eruption out of that dugout, became one of the most replayed moments in the sport's history. Honestly, completely earned. Then there's Joe Niekro, who tried to pull off a sleight of hand trick in front of 4 umpires at once. They came out to the mound to inspect him, and Niekro figured he'd casually flick the evidence away before anyone noticed. One problem, the toss was awful. The thing fluttered right down to the dirt next to the umpires, and it turned out to be a piece of sandpaper he'd been using to scuff the baseball. Instead of getting away clean, he authored one of the most accidentally hilarious cheating busts the game's ever seen. But Domingo Germán somehow topped the stupidity, because he got pinched for sticky stuff during the exact stretch when the league was cracking down harder than it ever had. Every pitcher in baseball knew the umpires were checking hands every single inning, knew the enforcement was relentless, knew there was zero tolerance left. And during a start against the Blue Jays, the crew checked Germán's hand, decided the grip was way too tacky and ejected him right there on the spot. The cheating's one thing. Doing it in the one season the whole league was hunting for it is the part that's hard to defend. And as dumb as that was, it might not top Michael Pineda deciding the smart hiding spot for Pine Tar was his own neck. He walked out to the mound with a dark smear sitting right there on his skin, and the Red Sox clocked it instantly. He almost skated by, two right up until the umpires asked him to turn around, saw the evidence in plain sight, and ejected him on the spot. A bad idea from the very first second. But hitters have authored their own disasters. And in 2003, Sammy Sosa gave the sport one of its all-time conspiracy theories. He hits a routine little ground ball, his bat shatters on contact, and pieces of cork come tumbling out onto the infield for the entire world to see. A lot of people didn't even understand the significance in the moment. But this was enormous. A corked bat is hollowed out and packed with lighter material, so the barrel whips through the zone quicker, which is exactly why it's banned. So the instant the umpire saw the cork, it detonated into a full-blown scandal. Sosa swore it was a batting practice bat he grabbed by accident. And here's the wild twist that actually backs him up a little. The league confiscated and x-rayed 76 of his other bats, even pulled a few off display at the Hall of Fame, and not one of them had a shred of cork inside. So maybe, just maybe, it really was an honest mix-up. But the worst injustice on this list didn't come from a cheater at all. It came from a man in blue. Back in 2010, Armando Galarraga was 1 out away from a perfect game. And you have to understand how sacred that is. There have only been around 24 perfect games in the entire history of Major League Baseball. And at that moment, he'd retired all 26 men he'd faced. 27 down, 1 to go. A routine ground ball gets flipped to first. Galarraga covers the bag, and the throw beats the runner by a clear step. Everybody in the stadium saw it. Everybody at home saw it. The one person who somehow didn't was first base umpire Jim Joyce, who called the runner safe and erased one of the rarest feats in sports right out of that kid's hands. Joyce admitted afterward he blew it, even tearfully apologized, but the call was never reversed, and the perfect game was gone forever. Galarraga got robbed by a missed call, but another hitter recently got robbed of his actual bat. Down 5 in the bottom of the 9th, looking to spark something, the batter turns on a 2-2 fastball and rips it off the top of the wall for a double, putting 2 runners into scoring position. But before the next guy can even dig in, Aaron Boone strolls out and asks the umpires to inspect the bat. And everyone's puzzled, because in-game bat checks are genuinely rare. Look close though, and there's an unusually large patch on the barrel where the finish is stripped away. Now, paint chipping is normal, especially on a matte bat, but a spot that big can be a tell that the wood's been shaved down to make the bat lighter and faster, which is flatly illegal. The umpires studied it, debated it for over 5 minutes, and ultimately pulled the bat out of play and shipped it off to the league for a closer look. But all of that, the chipped bats, the corked barrels, the sandpaper, none of it reshaped how people see baseball the way Barry Bonds did. Because Bonds wasn't a gimmick, he was the single most feared hitter on the planet, mashing baseballs all through the 90s and into the 2000s. He launched 73 home runs in one season, still the most anyone has ever hit, and he climbed all the way to becoming the all-time home run king. And yet there was always this one thing people kept circling back to. Barry went from a lean, wiry speed guy early in his career to looking like an absolute tank by the end of it. And that's when the steroid whispers turned into a roar. Then, in 2003, the Balco investigation cracked open. The lab accused of funneling performance-enhancing drugs to elite athletes, and Bonds' name landed right at the center of it. So even with every record, every home run, every bit of dominance the sport had ever witnessed, a massive chunk of his legacy got swallowed whole by the question of how he got there. And that's the thing about all of these. A chipped bat gets handed to a kid in the stands, but a shadow over a record follows you forever. So which one of these shocked you the most? And do you actually think Sammy grabbed the wrong bat by accident? Or is that the greatest cover story in baseball history? Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you had fun, smash that like button and subscribe for more.